Good morning, everyone. This is Sarah with Harrisburg Project, and today we are going to go over our new user training. So I had to reschedule this training. I'm glad that I did because I was able to get some more information about some of the new items that are coming into iStar. Some of them are there, some of them will be in tomorrow, and then we got a couple more things that aren't quite ready yet, but will be coming. But I'm going to talk about them today. Some of them that I don't know all the details about yet, but I'm going to do the best that I can to let you know what's going on, give you a heads up on some things. If you have not attended a training with us before, you can ask questions in the questions pod. I'm happy to answer those as we go through the session. If I don't answer your question immediately, it means that I'm probably going to get to that on the next couple of slides. So if you look in your GoToWebinar menu, you're going to see the questions pod. You're also going to see a handouts pod that has the handout for today. I was able to get that up late last week, so if you weren't able to get it before, it's there. Also, we always record first run of our sessions, so this will be up on our website probably toward the end of the week. So if you miss anything or have to step away, you can come back and listen to it again. This is probably one of my longest sessions, obviously. We try to get everything in that is mission critical as far as your job in iStar for the student approvals and the personnel approvals. So a lot of times when I have a new user and they come in and they request the things that they want, the topics they want to discuss, they always say claims also. We're not going to talk about claims today, okay? Claims, we will start in the spring. So if you've never done claims before, we will start that in the spring. There is so much information on the approval side that if I even attempted to start claims with you today, you would just be glazed over. I would lose all of you. So don't want you to think that we don't offer training for everything, but today we're just talking about the personnel approvals. That's going to be our first big deadline of the school year. And don't worry, you've got quite some time before that. So if you cannot see the GoToWebinar menu, look for a little orange arrow. Click on that on your screen and it'll show you those areas that I was talking about. So your handouts, your questions, etc. So will I be talking about Fund B students? I'm not going to talk about what's going on with the 22-23 claims and everything right now. We're doing totally new user today. So if you have questions about the correction periods that we're in for Fund B, give us a call or send us an email. So now I'll go over the definitions of fund codes and all those good things. I mean, I'm not going to completely ignore it. I'm just not going to be going over the claim portion right now. So okay, so it looks like I still got some people logging in. So let's let these numbers jump just a little bit. I know it's hard to get everywhere on time, especially at the beginning of a school year. So again, I'll just repeat one more time. If I missed you, if you have questions, you can ask them in the GoToWebinar questions pod. If you need your handout, that's going to be in the handouts pod. Okay. All right. So on the Fund B question, getting them approved for this school year. Okay. Yeah. When we get to that, if you want to ask me some pointed questions about it, I'm happy to go through them. You know, a lot of the Fund B records are disapproved at the beginning of the year. It's just kind of part of it. So we'll talk about that if you want to when we get to that fund code area. I don't want to run off and leave anybody before I even explain what they are. So, okay. Looks like we're kind of steady now, so we'll go ahead and get started. Again, this is going to be a longer session, so hopefully you got your coffee, been to the restroom and all those things. But again, we are recording this, so if you miss anything, have to step away or just want to come back and review it, we should have it up by the end of the week. So, and that will remain up. All right, so today we're going to talk about IWAS access, the iStar security. A lot of you may already have this, but I'm still going to talk about it. I want everybody to understand all the layers of protection, what IWAS is, those kinds of things. We'll go over the due dates for the school year. So the special ed planning calendar is out. I have put some resources at the end of this handout. That's something I've never done before. And honestly, it was just, I was trying a new template this year. And at the end, they had that. And I thought that's a pretty good idea. So a lot of links that don't really fit in anywhere else, I put there at the end. So we'll talk about those due dates, but again, that special ed planning calendar is very helpful to keep you kind of in line month by month. So if you want to print that, that would be helpful. We'll go over the instructions, where those are at, the landing page information, iStar versus SIS, so our relationship with them, data maintenance tasks, student approvals. Of course, that's going to be the bulk of this. Your SIS error checks in iStar, what warnings are versus errors. Then we'll go over the fund codes, the 2 different sets. And then I just give you like a list of definitions, basically. A lot of this you may already know. A lot of this should be just coming from your IEP program or your IEPs or your facts cover sheet, you know, whatever you're looking at to get data from the IEP into iStar. These things, you know, you should just be kind of copying over from one system to the other, but it's nice to know the difference, what they mean. And, you know, if you see something that is kind of odd, it may make you go back and question, hey, was this correct? So we have the information on percent special ed versus percent time inside, the district and school definitions, and then we'll do some functions in iStar that you will be doing throughout the year. So right now we've been doing a lot of deletes because kids that didn't come back after the summer, if they rolled into the new year, then we've been deleting those kids out because they didn't come back, they didn't attend a day, we don't need them in iStar. We do lots of end ads during the school year when you have changes on students' records. So if they have an IEP meeting or they have a re-eval or something like that and something changes, if it's going to change the approval record, then we can do the end ad, and we'll show you how to do that. I'll go over indicators 11 and 13. So those are part of the state performance plan indicators. We collect for many of those. 11 and 13 are very obvious. I'll show you how you can recheck edits as a whole, and then your error reports. Then we'll move to personnel. So I always put personnel on the end. So if you're personnel only, I'm sorry, maybe you want to come back, but some of you may want to leave at personnel because not everybody does both portions. So personnel, it's a really short portion, not near as much data entry or requirements as the student side. So we'll go through adding the records, the work assignments, how to calculate the FTE, your special ed type status codes. So our status codes there kind of like qualified versus not qualified for them. And then how you can get support, and then that resources page that I mentioned. So we'll go ahead and get started on our student piece. So IWAS access. So IWAS is the Illinois Web Application System. What this does is provides a big umbrella of security for ISB applications. So there are many, many applications that are in IWAS or accessed via IWAS. So it's login and password protected. You have to get an IWAS account by filling out a registration form, and then your district superintendent has to approve that account. So that's the first step in getting access to any IWAS application, is getting the actual account, getting that approved by your district superintendent. So that will be the first thing you have to do to be able to work in iStar. So this shows you some instructions. I'll be honest, we can help you a little bit with IWAS, but we support iStar. So we support one of the many systems in IWAS. So SIS is in IWAS, iStar's in IWAS, grant applications, all kinds of systems and things that your district uses are in IWAS. So we can help you a little bit, but if it gets complicated, you'll have to call the ISB help desk. But so you want to make sure first you get the account. After that, you then will have to ask for access to systems under IWAS. So what you're going to do is you're going to go look for iStar. It's going to be in the system listing. It's under reporting and annual. So then once again, you're going to put in a request for something. We're requesting now, we want iStar special education. Yours won't have training on it. That's from my screenshots from my training server, but yours won't have training on it. So you want iStar special education. So then you're going to want to ask for access to that system. And once again, your district superintendent is going to have to authorize access to the systems that you request. So you're going to have them do two things for you. One, approve your account, approve your IWAS account. And then two, approve your access to iStar. Sometimes it is beneficial for you to have read-only access to SIS. So if you're in a district, that may be something you want to ask for as well. So read-only access to SIS, and it may be beneficial to you at times. If you're in a cooperative, unfortunately, that's not going to be an option. But if you're in a district standalone user, then you'll be able to do that as well. Once you have access to iStar, then you will ask for the roles that you need inside our system. Okay, so what do you need? Do you need full access? Do you need read-only access? Do you only need access to student and not personnel? All of those things. So you're going to open up on our landing page, you're going to hit request access, and then you're going to click the system roles that you need. So if you're going to be doing student approvals, you're going to put request access under beside full access. So the next thing is, if you are going to be doing every single portion of data entry in iStar, whether it be for student or personnel, if you're expected to perform all tasks within the system, so you're going to need to do the mass change after we roll over, anything like that, then you need to make sure that you ask to be a district security administrator. Okay, so it's going to be district security administrator. You want to hit request access here. Essentially, that gives you full access to the entire system. Even though it says administrator, it doesn't necessarily mean that that should match the role in the district. So we want the district security administrators to be full-time data entry that, again, need to perform every single function in the system. So unless you're, if your director wants to be the district security administrator, then they're going to have to log in and do mass change for you. Okay, so sometimes I think maybe that shouldn't be the term that we use to describe this function, but basically it means, I'm a power data entry person and I need to do everything in the system. All right, so after you ask for this, then you're going to have either your district security or your district superintendent or another iStar user in the district that is a district security administrator already. Either one will come in and approve your security request. So it's a lot. Most of you probably already been through this and you're probably glad. It's 3 total steps. You have to have the IWAS account. You have to ask for access to iStar. Then you have to get your roles set. So when you're in iStar, what do you need to do in iStar? Once those 3 things are done, you won't have to do this again. Okay? So you have to remember that even though this can be a pain and cumbersome, this is very, very confidential data. So having those 3 layers of security is a must. All right, so I know it's hard. It's not fun. It's hard to get a hold of the people you need to do the things you need them to do, but only one time. All right. Okay, so moving on to due dates. So what's our big due date for this school year? Well, you've got some time because that's going to be our December 1 child count. So the December 1 child count looks at all fund codes except for N and U. If you don't know what those are yet, I'm going to explain them. But we look at all of the kids that are receiving services on an IEP or an ISP. So an ISP is an individual service plan. Those are kids that are not enrolled and maybe are homeschooled or go to parochial school for regular ed. So all fund codes with an active date. So they're active on December 1st. So those could be kids that start at the beginning of the year and they're still there on December 1st. If it's a student that started on the first day of school in August, but they left in October, they will not be on the count. If it's a student that begin date is December 2nd, they will not be on the count. So we are looking only at students that have an active approval record on December 1st. Okay, but we don't take that pickup on December 1st. We give you some time to make sure that you've got all the paperwork, you've had everything come across your desk, you've been able to look into the IEP system, you know all the meetings that have occurred, and that we give you until February 26th this year. So we pushed it back a week. It's going to be on a Wednesday. We always try to keep it on a Wednesday. So February 26th this year, you're going to need to have your December 1 child count kids entered and approved, meaning error-free, no errors on those records. Okay? This is our largest approval collection of the school year, and the December 1 child count is used for multiple things. It's used for your claims, your special ed profile, your district report card. If you have parochial schools, it's used for proportionate share. I mean, I can't even think of all of them. We have a chart on our website that tells you what the December 1 child count is used for, and it's a page with legs that just go everywhere. Okay, so state performance plan indicators, that's a big one as well. So some of those are taken from the December 1 child count. All right, so very, very important. Anytime we have a due date, again, I know some of you aren't brand new, but for those of you who are, we will begin weeks out sending emails telling you this is due, these are the errors you have, this is how you correct them, etc. If you get an email from us and you don't know what to do, you call us or email us and we will walk you through it. We are not going to let you forget any of these due dates. We will bug you to death. So sometimes it gets, you know, this is on a Wednesday. This is the big one. So probably Thursday or Friday of the week before, if we see you still got trouble, you've got errors, got a lot of errors, we're going to start calling and say, hey, are you okay? Can we help? Is there, you know, is something going on? Are you going to be able to get this done? Those kinds of things. So we're always going to be doing our email and call campaigns to make sure that you don't forget any of these due dates. All right. Next, we will have the child count certification. What this means is your district superintendent will come into iStar and they will verify that the child count that is on file is accurate and they will sign off on it. Now, the thing about this is that once we collect that data on February 26th, it cannot be changed. So what do? You make sure that mid-January, your district superintendent or whoever is going to do this certification, because they can designate someone else to do it. Whoever's going to do this needs to be involved in January. Okay, so every Friday, starting in January, leading up to the due date, we take a preliminary snapshot and we display that in iStar. And what that says is, if we were to take the snapshot today, this is what your child count would be. So you're going to know. In addition, when we post that, there are 3 columns: this year, last year, and the year before. So not only are you able to see what that preliminary number is, but you're also able to compare it to the previous 2 years to see if you're 100 kids off, something's wrong. Either way, you know, can you explain it? Those kinds of things. So the person that's going to sign off on that child count needs to be involved mid-January, because again, after the 26th of February, that number cannot be changed by the district. So they are going to have to certify the number as is and move on. Okay. The next due date after that will be in May. May 1st, we're going to be looking at your orphanage kids. These are going to be kids that are a fund D, E, F, or G. So we're looking at their approval records, and the begin dates on those is before March 2nd. So any students that have a March 1st or before begin date and are a fund D, E, F, or G have to be added and approved, so error-free on May 1st. So I know most of you caught that new fund code in there, so don't worry, I'm going to talk about it. Next, this year, our due date for orphanage for regular term is June 16th. So June 16th, 2025, we're going to have our funds D, E, F, and G claims due. Okay. So I told you earlier, we're not going to talk about claims today. I'm just giving you overview of what we're looking at. As far as we know, interpreter data will be picked up again this year. So hopefully you're still collecting that and carrying on as in the past. I know that a lot of you that use a very popular IEP program should be okay with that. But you want to make sure that you are paying attention and keeping track of those interpreters or translations that are being given out after meetings. and that's going to be due again June 30th this year. Excess cost claims and indicator 11 and 13 are due on July 15th. Our personnel approvals, this will be the second year we've bumped it back. It's due July 31st. And then we're going to have our Fund B and S claims due August 15th. Okay, so a lot of these dates are what we call statutory dates. They're written in school code. We can't change them. Where they're very strict on things that can happen after these due dates. So I know that a lot of you may notice we're getting stricter and stricter on what we will allow after a due date. And, we have to. When funding and disbursements, they get audited. And so we have to be really careful about what we let happen after these statutory dates. So, a lot of things have been a little stricter than they used to be. And, it's a struggle, but we've got to make sure that we all understand the importance of these due dates and not being able to add records. Now, the nice thing about this is, if you get everything added on time, you always get a correction period. So it's not the end of the world if you don't have your approval done, or you got errors, or your claim's not done, or you have errors. Okay, we always have a correction period for that, but getting these adds, that's the big thing. We can't show adds for certain codes after the statutory due date. So understand that when you're asking us for things, and overrides and things like that, it's going to get stricter and stricter all the time. But these statutory due dates typically, if they change, for example, we've got June 16th this year. I think that's because the 15th, which is the statutory date, is on a Sunday. So typically, if it's on a Sunday, they're able to move it to the Monday. If we have a statutory due date on a Saturday, they put it on the Friday before. So, but you always know well in advance, what these dates are going to be for the new year. So this is what we're looking at. Again, you should be able to find all this in that special ed planning calendar that, again, we're going to have linked at the end of the session. So right now, our instruction manuals are out, and we're going to have an update for personnel. So right now we have, this is the approval instructions for the student. I don't necessarily think that if you're new, you need to read this cover to cover, but you do need to give it a good look over. It will tell you a lot of the reasons why the air checking is the way it is. If you have unique not necessarily unique, but a little bit different situation, if you're a pre-K through 8 district, or if you're just a high school district, you're going to find things in here that you didn't know. Okay, and so it won't be a surprise if they just occur in iStar and you have all these red errors one day. So I'm not going to say you have to read it cover to cover, but it is worth looking at. A lot of it is going to be a lot of definitions. So the actual reading, there's not a ton of language to actually read through. So I would recommend that you do glance at it. Next is the personnel approval manual. Now we're going to have an update come out to that tomorrow. And we're also going to have a deployment to iStar tomorrow. So we're going to have some changes come in. Not everything that we're waiting for, but the majority of the new items will be coming in tomorrow. Claims, we're not going to worry about now. This manual, as far as I know, probably won't change again this year. We're going to change everything from 23-24 to 24-25, and hopefully we'll just move along like we always do. I know that a lot of y'all have seen that we have some new fund codes. Don't worry. They're going to be easy to deal with on claims. So the easiest ones to do, that's what these are going to turn into. So don't worry too much about that. You're not adding a whole lot to your plate as far as cost and programs out and stuff with these new codes. All right, our landing page. Finally, I'm getting into iStar. So this is what it might look like when you log into iStar once you've got your security roles. Down here at the bottom, these are things you're not going to use these every day. So like the one that stands out, current child count status. If you go look at this right now, it's going to say your child count right now for 24-25 is 0. That's because we're not going to start doing anything with that until January. You can look at the previous 2 years though, but you're not going to see that populate until I think the 10th is when we're starting our first preliminary snapshot. So you won't see anything until that day, and it'll be a preliminary number anyway. So you're only going to start looking at that in January. It's not something you're going to go do every single day. So indicator 14, it's another indicator we collect on. But first of all, you're only part of this cycle once every 4 years. So if you're a co-op, you probably have to deal with this a lot. But if you're a standalone district, then you're not going to deal with this every single year. Okay, and it's only on a certain time frame. So I think it comes out in April or May, and it was due last week. Okay, so things are going to look different here for everyone. It's going to depend on what type of user you are, what kind of roles you have, those kinds of things. But the things that I think a lot of people do look at are these fatal error screens. And what I want to tell you is right now in 24-25, if you've just started school, these errors aren't going to mean anything to you. You're probably going to have a SIS error on every single student until your district does SIS uploads, okay? So don't panic if you go in there and it's terrible. On the other hand, unless you've gone in and ran a recheck edit on the data, it may not look terrible. So don't let that deceive you either. We don't have our recheck running at night simply because we don't see the point of giving you an error on every kid. But if you run a recheck, it's going to kick in that error checking, and you're going to see a lot more errors. Okay, so either way, I think that is something that a lot of people look at. The rest of this, again, it's going to be something you're going to use a handful of times in the year. Everybody's will look different based on the security that they have. Where you will spend the majority of your time is going to be under this approvals and claims drop down. And you're going to be working on your approval records all year long. So what are you doing on these records? So these approval records represent students that are receiving special ed services. So they either, again, have an IEP, the majority of them will, or they have an ISP, so a service plan. Students with 504s are not going to be an ISTAR. They have to have the IEP or the ISP. So they are receiving special ed services, and they are a resident of your district. The only time that you're going to be reporting students that did not reside in your district is if you have a parochial school in your jurisdiction. So if you have a parochial school in your jurisdiction, the kids that come to that school are your responsibility, and you would have them in ISTAR, okay? Those kids can have an IEP or they're going to have an ISP. So when we talk about parochial schools, that's the first question we always ask back, ISP or IEP? And that tells us a lot. So what are we doing with these approvals throughout the school year? What is your job? What's your role? We know about these due dates, but what do you do before that? What are you doing to prepare? First of all, right now we're in a new school year. Do you have new kids? If you have new kids, then you need to add them into ISTAR, okay? Do you have kids that rolled over from last school year, but they need some changes on their approval record? So maybe they had a meeting at the end of the year, they've had some changes, and you need to edit the current record. So you can edit right now. After the year gets going and your students start to have meetings, or they have an amendment or something in their IEP, and that change will also affect the approval record, then you can do what we call the end add. So the end add will make a copy of the record you have, and it'll give you a new copy. It's like doing a save as on a Word document. We're able to keep the history, but we're able to move on without having to create a whole new record and fill in all the fields again. Okay, so again, it's like a save as. Then we're going to be deleting records. This is a popular time to be deleting records. So if you know, at the end of the year, you know, if you're a high school, if you have a high school, and you know you have kids that are going to graduate. So you can take care of your graduates in the previous year. At the end of the previous school year, you can take care of those kids. If you end them and say they graduated, they're not going to roll into the new year. But you can't know every kid that's not going to come back to you. So if you have kids that have not come back, but they rolled over in ISTAR, then you're going to delete those kids. Right now, up until October 15th, when you delete those kids, ISTAR is going to say, when did they end and what is their reason for exit? So we are collecting what we call exit data. So ISB still wants to know what happened to those kids. When did they exit and why did they exit? So right now you're going to be looking at exit data. If you have questions about that, let us know. We've been running articles in our news briefing and we did a new video on it, okay? And then throughout the year, you're going to have kids that move. They're going to leave. They're going to go back to regular ed. They're going to move out of your district. They're going to, you know, who knows, but they're going to be gone and they need to come out of iStar. So you're just going to exit those kids and give them an end date and an exit code. Okay. So these are the main tasks that you're going to be doing all year long on these approval records in iStar. This is your role. This is how you take care and babysit these records. All right. Okay, I don't see any questions. I don't know if that's good or bad. All right, so you go into approvals and claims and student and approvals. And again, this is where you're going to spend so much time working in iStar. All right. So what happens is you're on your report tab whenever you open this by default. So if you were to come down here and just don't enter any filters in, don't search by a student name, don't search by a school, don't enter anything. If you just hit the search button, that would show you the listing of all the students that you have entered in iStar for this school year currently. Okay, so those are the kids that have approval records that you would be reporting. So that's the list of students that you're evaluating. And then you're going to look at them and go back to the previous slide and say, do I need to do any of these things? You know, am I missing kids? Is this data wrong? Do I need to edit this? Did this kid come back? So that's the group you're evaluating. You can export that list to Excel. You can run a report. We'll look at reports later. You can run sky's the limit on reports that you can run. You can run those if PDFs. A lot of them will export to Excel as well. So any way that you want to evaluate the students that you have in iStar currently, this is the list you're talking about. We're going to hit search here. Again, you can export to Excel. You can go to a report, run alpha list of fact students, whatever you need to do. But those are the kids that we're going to be working with. After that, the unreported tab is next door. What this means is if your district has done a SIS upload, so the student information system has done a SIS upload this school year already, and they have indicated, so your district has indicated in that upload that certain students have an IEP. So there is a checkbox called IDEA Services, and it's in SIS. If your district has checked that on the SIS upload for students and they don't already have a record in iStar, then you'll find them on the unreported. So this could be an indicator that, oh, little Johnny is under unreported. SIS did their upload and they said he has an IEP. I don't have that kid in iStar yet. What do I need to do? Do you immediately add him? Well, only if he really has an IEP. Okay, so don't trust it 100% that that's absolutely telling you what you need to do. But it's an indicator that there's a potential that somebody might be missing. Okay, so there's potential that you need to add that record into iStar. So it's a tool. You don't have to use it. But if you do use it and you find a student there that you want to add, it's an easy, you can just hit the plus. Okay, next is possible youth in care. Okay, I think that I have a screen on. No, I don't. Okay, possible youth in care. These are students that are possibly orphanage students. So what does that matter to us? Well, usually the placement tells us what kind of fund code we will give to a student. So the fund code is going to represent the type of funding you get back. Okay. And placement is normally how we determine that code, unless that child is youth in care, which means they are an orphan. They have been declared by DCFS as being youth in care. And when students when they qualify as orphans, then your district would change that to a different fund code and those kids are 100% reimbursable for the costs. So when we looked at our dates to remember, that June 16th, that's when we make the claims on these kids. You really want to make sure you're identifying these kids. It could be the difference between your standard EBF funding or 100% of their special ed costs, and that includes their tuition, transportation, if they have special transportation, if they have aides, contractual costs, any individual costs that you're paying out of pocket, like OT, PT, any of that. Okay, so everything that you're spending, you can get back if it's an orphanage student. Okay, so what do? If you see kids under here, first thing you do is make sure they're special ed. We give you all the kids in your district. So it's going to have regular ed, special ed. If these kids are special ed and they're already in iStar, then they're going to have an existing fund code on the screen. If they're an A, you change them to an E. If they're a B as in boy, you change them to an F as in Frank. Okay? And I think that with our new codes coming in, that if they are an S, that you would change them to a G. Okay? I'm going out on a limb there, but I think that that is what will happen. All right? So the new fund code pieces, I'm going to talk about them, but those are the pieces that we aren't going to be in iStar yet tomorrow. So we've got a lot to, I've got a lot to learn, and I don't know that, I think we all do. So, and I know the basis of it. Okay. All right. So if they want me to repeat, under possible youth and care, if you see a student in that listing that already has a fund code in iStar, if you see an A, change it to an E. If you see a B as in boy, change it to an F as in Frank. If you see an S as in Sarah, change it to a G as in George. Okay, and I see the question about an NDAD. I'm just holding it till we get to that spot, okay? All right. So once you make those changes, promise you 9 times out of 10, you're going to get 3 errors that say this child isn't eligible and rada, rada, rada. Don't immediately change it back to what the code was before. Send us in an email, or you can call, but email's better. Send us the SysIDs for the kids that you changed to an orphanage code and you're getting these eligibility errors. Send us those codes. So send us those IDs. We will then manually check against the DCFS file to see if they do indeed qualify, because the file that we look at for our air checking is straight from DCFS. Oftentimes there are mismatches between what is in DCFS and what is in SIS as far as these spellings, the DOB, demographics about the kid. So yes, it takes a human, us here at HBUG, a human to actually go and compare these. So here in 2024, yes, we still have to do that. But you have to think about DCFS's file. You know, you don't know the situation at these intakes. You know, they could be totally different names. Sometimes they've been adopted, so they're partial year approved, and then they get adopted and we don't know. So again, don't immediately change them back if you get the errors. Check with us first, and then we're going to tell you, yes, they're approved, or they're approved and we're going to have ISB do an override because of these discrepancies, or we're going to tell you they're only approved for such and such months. So all kinds of different things can happen with these kids that can make them eligible and not. So a lot goes into it, but I don't want anybody to change, you know, something from an A to an E and they get the error and see all the red and panic and change it back. Just email us first, give us time. And another thing I'll mention is that the file that we get from DCFS, we always get it about 3 weeks after a month ends. So for example, right now we're in September. We will not get the August file until Well, for 10 more days probably. Usually they've been good and we've been getting it loaded on the 20th of each month. Okay, so if you've got errors on orphans in August, there's no point in asking us yet. Wait until September 20th or after. And honestly, we've been trying to keep better track here. So as soon as they load it, we run the error report and we've been reaching out to you. We know that y'all are busy, so we're going to try to help you with that. Okay, any questions? That was a lot, and the youth and care is so important. So what I recommend is, even if you don't have any, if you've, you never know, you may have one pop up for you. Some districts have tons and tons and tons of orphanage kids, and some have never had one. Regardless, I would make a task in whatever you use in your SIRI or your computer or whatever. I would make a monthly task to check that tab at a minimum, to make sure that, that you don't miss anything. Okay. Okay. I haven't done a long training in a long time. I'm needing my coffee. Okay. So we went over all those tasks that you're going to do throughout the year. So we're going to go now, how do you do it? This is an ad. So I kind of cut this screen off, but this is going to be all your filters were up here and your search and all that. So right below that, you're going to see an ad. Throughout the system, everything that where you need to add is going to look just like that. Okay, everything is as uniform as possible. So anytime you need to add a new record, you're going to see the plus with the words add. When you click that, you're going to have two options. To search for a student, you have to know something about them because you're getting ready to create a record for them in this system. So you either need to know their SIS-ID, or you need to know the last name, first name, date of birth, and gender combo. We are searching SIS right now. So we're trying to go over to, I guess, our sister program and try to find that student in the student information system. So what does that mean? They have to have a SIS-ID. Okay. Now I'm going to talk about the SIS relationships a little bit later on, but I have had several calls this summer about people that think that they can't add a student unless the full enrollment is there and everything is perfect in SIS. That is not the case. All we require to add the student into iStar is that they have a SIS-ID. So they have to be in the SIS system. They have to exist. So as long as they have the ID, we're not worrying about anything else just yet. So one of these two ways to search for that child. Hopefully, if you search for that SIS-ID, when you hit search, you're going to get one result. I will tell you, you may get more than one if you use the combo. So in my opinion, it's best to try to have the SIS-ID. So you're going to search by that. And when you hit search, your student should pull up. You click on the student's name. And that's how you're going to add an approval record. So I've said approval probably 50 times so far. This is what I'm talking about. This is an approval record. So up at the top, it's going to default to the current school year. Next is include on approval. So all of your records should be approved. They will be by default. The only time that you would uncheck this is if you have a student that resides in another district and you are serving them. You can track them here, but you're not responsible for reporting them, okay? Their resident district will be reporting them. Okay. Oh, that's nice. Thank you, Jody. That is so nice. Okay, Sherry, I'll get to yours in just a minute. I'm not ignoring any of these questions. We're just not there yet. All right. So 9 times out of 10, you're going to have these, you want these checked, okay? Do you have to track kids that you're serving? No, sometimes people just want to have them in. That gives you the ability to do so. We can't see those records. ISB can't see those records. They are yours. They're for your use. You can have them run on reports or whatever you need to. All right. Next is duly enrolled. There are several combinations for this, but the most common is that you may have kids that attend a therapeutic day school. for their tuition. And they also may reside there. So they would have what is called a 3437, and they have a residential and a tuition record. And typically, we don't allow more than one record at the same time in iStar. We don't let them overlap. So in order to allow that, you can check this box and make a private facility tuition record, and then have a whole other record that looks like this. Check the box there, and then have the residential record for that child also. Okay. All right. Let me flip back real quick. I want to check something because I had a question here. I thought somebody asked if there was a way to only look at kids or to find kids that might be unchecked. And I think there is a report. Okay, I'm going to write that down to make sure that you know what? I might do a Q&A. We'll see how many questions we have. Okay, I'll go over the duly enrolled again. I see a question about that. All right. Okay, so on the unchecked kids, I will get back to you. I might probably end up doing a Q&A on this because I'm getting a lot of good questions. All right, so what numbers did you say when the student is duly enrolled? Oh, for duly enrolled, so if they have a residential record, I think I probably said 3437. It's 34-37. That's the application that has to be filled out in order for room and board to be approved for a child. So if they have that, then they have residential piece as well. So that was the number that I said. All right. Okay, I think. All right. So then, all right, one more. All right, would a student who is with us in the morning and enrolled in a parochial school in the afternoon, parentally placed, be duly enrolled? Do they have an IEP or ISP? That's a Fund K, as in kite. They had an IEP is what she said back to me. So that's a Fund K. So you don't have to have two records. It is another, K is duly enrolled. It's the fund code for duly enrolled. All right. So next is the fund. So after we look at this screen, I'm going to go through all of these fields and tell you about them more. Because if I tried to show you a screenshot of every fund code, we would be here till kingdom come. So first is the fund. Now, the most common fund code in the state is the Fund A. So that's why I choose it for this presentation. 93% of the students in Illinois are Fund A. So Fund A kids are public kids. They have IEPs. They're not orphans. They don't go to a private facility. They don't go to parochial school. They're not homeschooled. Okay, the majority of your kids are Fund A. They're public kids. Now, they can go to your school district. They can go to another public school district. They can go to a cooperative program. That is all still considered public. And typically those kids are Fund A unless they fall into the list I just rattled off, but we'll go through all of them. Percent special ed. Remember, you're going to be copying this over from somewhere else, but keep in mind, this is the content of the child's education. When we are talking about the percent special ed, it's about the instruction that they are receiving. We are not worrying about their environment. Okay, so we're looking at instructional minutes. Okay. All right, 3437, that's you'll find it on ISBE's website. Who's that? Kalo and his residential. Yes, if they're at Kalo, Jody, what fund code? Are they an orphan? Okay, so this is a student that's at Kalo, which is a pretty common private facility. So if the therapeutic day school, we get a lot of questions about some of these facilities, and some we get to know. So Kalo is a private facility. This kid's going there for tuition, but they also have a 3437 and they're working on residential. So the child lives there as well. So is this student, would we call them duly enrolled? Yes. So they're going to have 2 Fund B records, one for Kalo tuition, one for Kalo residential. And we check to that 3437 in iStar. And if you've never had, you guys may have, but if you've never had a residential student before, I have a training scheduled. So we're going to send our news briefing out tomorrow with the release of, or with the update to production of iStar with some changes. So we're going to do that tomorrow. And I added the rest of the trainings and through December. So I'm going to do a training on room and board. So be sure, if you've not done that before, or if you need a refresher, to sign up for that. I've never done one before, but I think that with all the kids that we have and all the questions we've gotten, that's something we needed to add. So we're going to do that. Okay, so next is this display update SIS enrollment. So I'm going to talk in the next couple of screens about how important the relationship is between iStar and SIS, what type of air checking we have on this. But what we're looking at is to make sure that if you have students that are enrolled in your district, that we are putting them in iStar within the same date ranges at the same facilities. So we're going to say that, you know, looking here, this would match. This child is at Bella. So Harrisburg is the district. Bella is the school. All right. And then we go down to look at the serving district, and we're seeing again that we're doing well here. The provider is Harrisburg and the serving school again is Bella. So we would look over here and make sure that this matches what we have here. Now, my dates are a little bit off, so we would have a problem with dates here. But what we would want to make sure when we're looking at dates is that this August 15th matches August 15th on the SIS enrollment. So what this does is when you push this button, it gives you the opportunity to see, do I have any discrepancies between what I have in iStar and what I have in SIS? Do they match up? All right. Next is the disability section. You can have up to 2. Primary and secondary, of course. Related services, you can have up to 8. If you have more than 8 on the IEP, give me a call or send me an email and ask me, what one should I put into iStar? The reason I say this is because if this is a student that was an orphan, for example, and we went to do claims in the spring, and I would want to say, okay, let's look at the related services for this child. If I see a 25, I'm going to say, this is special transportation. Do you have a cost for this? We're going to look for an individual aid. Do you have a cost for this? This is OT. This is PT. I'm going to say, is this an employee in your district, or did you pay for this, you know, through a contract cost? Do you have an invoice for this? So what I would want to say is the first 8, the ones you're going to show need to be the ones that could get money in reimbursement back for you. All right. So that is the reason that if you have more than 8, and I've heard of up to 10 or more sometimes. So just let me know if you have questions. So the educational environment is going to be dictated based on the percent time inside the regular classroom, which is really weird because it's not on my screen. Oh, I've got them in a separate class. I'm sorry. So I shouldn't have done that way. Well, I have them at this Bella Learning Academy, which is a separate class. It's an early childhood school. So I probably shouldn't have done this. But if I had them at Harrisburg High School, you would have a field that said percent time inside the regular classroom. And that would dictate your educational environment. So if they were 80% or more inside the regular classroom, it would indicate to you what code you would need to choose in the drop down, and that would be a 01 under those circumstances. Now, our error checking will guide you. So if you put in 70% and then you try to use a 01, which is only allowable for 80% or more, then it would give you an error and say these don't match up. Okay. All right, I see this moving over here. Okay, good example. I just told kind of the most common for duly enrolled, but this is a good example too. They have a child that's going to a private facility part of the day and then coming back to the district part of the day. You can have an A and a B. Okay. That's not uncommon. What you can't have, and this is what I get a lot of questions about, is if you have a child that spends half the day in your district and then half the day in a co-op program, a lot of people want to do 2 A's. We don't do that. You just have to pick one. Okay. All right. So, unable to locate residential placement. We only have 6 or 7 of these kids in the state. If you need to use that, you're going to be reaching out to us. For your pre-K kids, this is something that is new this year. We gave you a sneak peek last week in our news briefing of the screen. It's going to be in the system tomorrow. And I did a video with that screen that'll be in the news briefing tomorrow as well. So this is a new element. It's only for pre-K kids. So grade level has to be pre-K. And we're going to ask, what is the special ed service location? On this example, we're saying they're at Bella, so it's a public school district. This drop down is going to have several options. In my video tomorrow, I'm going to show you what you do if you say they're at a child care facility. And so if you do that, then it's going to be basically asking you, what's the facility, what's the address. So what you would do under these circumstances is you will say first, after you select the location type, basically coming from where are they actually physically seated when they're receiving services. And so a lot of times you're confined to picking a serving school that's in a public district, when in reality that child may be at some other center receiving the services. It's the best we can do in iStar. Okay, we don't have access to all of those, Miss Sally's daycare and all of those things, but they may in reality be receiving the services at Miss Sally's daycare. So after you choose the location type, you're going to say, do they receive the majority of their services at this location? So of course with mine, this child's at Bella and they're receiving all their services there. So I'm going to check the box. But if you said this was a child care facility, so thinking like a daycare or a learning center or something that's not part of a public district or a cooperative, then you would also say serving location is different than the serving school. So they're at, and in my example on my video, you'll see I typed in Miss Sally's daycare. They're at Miss Sally's daycare. If they weren't at Miss Sally's daycare, they would have been at Bella. All right, so this is common that 95% of the time we can actually list where the child is physically receiving services in the serving school. There are times when we cannot, and it's usually with these littles because they do go to these other areas and they receive services there. So you would check this box. When you do that, on the video that you're going to see tomorrow for the demonstration, I type in Miss Sally's daycare and I put in the address. So it's street, city, state, and zip. All right. So that's one thing that's new, and honestly, not too bad, right? Not too bad. Yes, I know it's another check, possibly, maybe some data entry, maybe not, but not too bad, just for pre-K kids. All right, next, you're going to select your term. You can have regular, summer, or both. Both you can have for any fund codes except for your orphanage codes. For orphanage, we have two separate claims. We have a regular term and a summer term claim. Regular term is due in June. Summer term is due November 1st every year. So if it is an orphanage record, you're going to have a regular record and a summer record. All of the other codes, you can have term of B for both if you think they're going to go to summer school. Okay, so I'm not sure I was clear on this now. So will the selection default for pre-K students already in iStar? There's no default. I mean, we don't know the answer. So there won't be a default. So in other words, what you're asking me is, do I have to touch every pre-K record? And yes, the answer is yes. Yeah, we don't know the default. I mean, here, my example is probably not great because we do have a learning academy here, but I mean, this is in Harrisburg, but you know, where my kids go, we don't have that. So it would be just the elementary school. There would be no way to know what this selection should be. Okay, as far as term goes, I was always told to mark both unless they are promoting to high school next year. Is that correct? I mean, it depends on if you have summer school. It's not hurting anything, but I mean, if you don't have a summer school, so it's up to you. Yeah, I mean, it's up to you. I wouldn't tell you you have to change what you've been doing. The ones I really would want to watch, of course, would be orphans. Do you need a summer record? Watch your private facility kids, that kind of thing. All right. Okay, so my next question, how do you add a new outplacement school to the system? So I think that we just got that video up onto our website. I'm not sure if it's there or not, but the LEA list maintenance that I did last week, that it shows you how to add a new public outplacement or a parochial. A big question that I get though is, I can't find how to add this school. And then I'll say, well, what's the school? And they'll say Menta or Kalo. You won't add those schools. That means you needed to change the fund code. So I know we kind of haven't got to that yet, but you know, I told you this is A. This is just A. If you called me and said the kid's going to Menta and I can't add the school in the LEA list maintenance, I'm going to say we don't go there. We change this to a B. And when you do that, you're going to get a private facility drop down and you're going to find Menta or Kalo or Hope School or Easter Seals. Okay, so it's all going to depend on the fund code selection. As to what you see here, fields will appear, fields will disappear. All right. All right. Do I have any questions on this before I move on? Begin date, I don't think I got to that. Begin date, that's the day the student starts receiving services. So if they start mid-year, what's the start date on the IEP? If they start the first day of school, what do we think is the first day of school? It's the first pupil attendance day. So when you look at your public calendar, often you're going to see 1, 2, or 3 days leading up to the first day of school that say TI on the calendar. They stand for Teacher Institute. Those are not the begin dates we want to see here. We want to see the first pupil attendance day, the day the kids come to school. When you look at a calendar, the official calendar that your superintendent submits, that's always an X day. It may be an X alone. It may start in X, but that's what you're looking at. Okay, so the special ed service location for pre-K kids, will this be daycare or school? Yeah, I mean, either, we don't know. That's what they want to know. Are they, you're forced to put a school in for them, for their serving school. You don't have a choice. So even if they are at Miss Sally's daycare and you've got somebody going down there providing speech to them, you're not able to reflect that right here. We don't have that option. So now the early childhood division wants to know, where is that? Where is the child actually receiving the services? Is it, in the district at the Learning Academy? That's really where they're at. Or are they really at Miss Sally's daycare receiving their services? So it's a constraint because we don't have all of those locations in our system to say, yeah, they're at, the daycare or the Catholic Church or whatever. So these locations, that's a drop down. It's going to give you a canned list. It's in the approval manual. That part is out if you want to go look at that. So what I would recommend is, I feel like I'm going to take too long for some of you guys, but let me get out of this real quick and I'll show you. Okay. Okay, here on our website, don't open this first manual, go to this one. This is the changes document, and usually it's not anything great because, if there's no changes, nobody really pays attention to this. But let me see these bookmarks. Okay, so if you open your bookmarks in your browser, which I'm in Chrome, so that's how I did it, just kind of went over here, hit these lines, and these bookmarks we make, but they won't always show up in everybody's browser. So this new EC Fields for pre-K students, that's what you'll want to go to, okay? And that'll tell you a little bit about the language that was added. It was added by the early childhood department. Okay, is the drop down also for ISP students? When they wrote the rules, they did not say IEP versus ISP. They did not say anything about any different fund codes. They strictly told us pre-K. So, which for that, I would think you could say in the, well, I don't know. Okay, do I need to change all students file to say the first day of school? I am assuming that you haven't done the mass change yet. So you might want to give us a call or send us an email and have us look at your data, and then we can help you do the mass change. This says, do I need to change all student files to say the first day of school? Now, you're only going to want them to be the first day of school if that's when they started. If you had a kid that started today, their begin date would be today. Okay, so it's the day they start receiving services in your district. Okay, any more questions before I move on over? Okay. Now, our relationship with SIS. I used to do this in a different order. I feel like this is a better order because now we've seen the approval record. So kind of hold this page, if you've got your printout, hold this page, and then we'll talk about this one. So what we're looking at as far as matching up with SIS goes is that when we get to the error checking, you've put the record into iStar. We're going to do a save and check errors, and it's going to tell us, if we're good or not. Do we have errors? Do we have warnings? Do we have nothing? Nothing's great. What we're looking at as far as our relationship with SIS, first and foremost, is the home district in SIS has to equal the resident district in iStar. This is the district in which the student resides. If I live at this office in Harrisburg, then I am a resident of Harrisburg School District. So both of these would be Harrisburg. Next, we're going to look at the homeschool and compare it to the resident school. Even though they have different terms, it's the same definition. Where would the child go if they were not receiving services? So if I am, supposed to go to Westside School here in Harrisburg, but I need things that school can't give me. So I'm going to go to a co-op program that is in a different building. We would not want to know where that different building is and all those things. We would want to know if I didn't need services that caused me to have to be out of my resident school, what would my school be? Well, my school would be Westside School still. Okay, if I was in regular ed, it would be a Westside School. All right, and then service provider in SIS versus serving district in ISTAR. Who is providing the program? What entity is running the program? So if I'm in Harrisburg and I'm going to a Harrisburg program, then Harrisburg's running my program. If I am in Harrisburg, but my co-op WAVSED is running my program, then this would be WAVSED. So it's usually going to be another public district. It's going to be your public district, or it's going to be a special ed cooperative, because all of those are considered public. Okay. So as far as finding those new EC fields, you need to look in our approval manual on our website to read about them. But if you're looking for them in ISTAR, they're not there yet. Be there tomorrow. Okay, usually they deploy about 7. So by the time y'all get there, unless you're real early birds. Okay, second, we're looking at the placements to make sure that they match, but we're also looking at the dates. So the best way to understand this is to look at the examples. If I have a begin date in ISTAR on my approval record of September 2nd, and this student started in my district and was enrolled on August 14th, then that's great. That means they were enrolled in the district, and then later on, they started receiving special ed services. Now, at the beginning of the school year, most of these dates are the same. The SIS enrollment date and the begin date in ISTAR, a lot of them are the same, because these are kids that rolled over. They were in there last year. They're still in there. They all came back, and both of those dates will be the same. Any kids that have started since the first day of school, this may not be the case. Move-in kids, they may have the same date. It might be today, okay? But existing kids that have been in your district and are then tested and start receiving services, their dates may be different, but you've got to make sure they're enrolled in your district or you can't add them in. All right, the disapproved example, swap those dates. We cannot say that a kid started September 2nd, but we were serving them August 14th. All right, these have to be by the date. We're very particular about these. You get some grace throughout the school year on these. We're able to help and resolve some things throughout the year, but I will say ISB is tightening up on doing overrides on SIS enrollments. So if you don't know your SIS person, get to know them. If you're a co-op, I'm sorry, because you probably got to know 20 of these people, but it's important to relay how important this is to your funding, to your data accuracy, to your error checking. And again, we're all getting stricter on this. This has been a part of this system since 2017. So, we're trying to build it up, move it forward. We want these systems to flow. We want the data to be right back and forth. All right. So one thing I did forget to mention, though, is the beauty of this relationship with SIS is that when you're looking at your approval record, you're going to see a bunch of demographic information up here. That all comes from SIS. You don't have to type it in. So when we go search SIS to add a student in, it brings over their name, their date of birth, their ethnicity, their grade level. I can't even remember everything. So you don't have to type all that in. You just get to start the approval record. But you have to remember, and we get a lot of questions this time of year about that. If you look in there and you're like, I don't have any grade levels, SIS has to do that. We can't change it, okay? So if you see something that's incorrect in demographics, it has to be changed in SIS. All right, so I've talked a lot about having approved records on due dates and no errors, and what you can do with that. So first of all, sometimes you can fill out an approval record. You have a save and check at the bottom, and it will tell you at the bottom if you have any errors or warnings. Warnings will be in green. If you have a warning, it's not something you need to ignore, but sometimes it's not something you can change or resolve. You may not need to. Okay, so if you've looked at a warning and there's nothing you can do about it and everything is fine as far as the record goes, then you can ignore a warning. You cannot ignore an error. Errors are going to be in red, and it is something that is fatally wrong with the record that you need to correct. Okay, the majority of our red usually involves SIS. Okay, so we can help you with it. If you can't figure out what the problem is, give us a call, send us an email. That is what we are here for. All right. Okay, so we're going to start back at the top of that approval record. I'm going to give some more details. So now you've seen the record, you know what you have to fill out, you know what the obligation is. So I've talked about Fund A. Again, these are public kids, they have IEPs, 93% of the state, over 93% of the kids in the state are Fund A. Okay. Oh, Sherry. Your difficulty getting districts to add students in SIS that are tested but found not eligible. So these are usually your littles, they're pre-K kids. So they do have to be reported. And I'll go over those fund codes. Those are the N and the U that I talked about earlier. If you test kids, they have to be put in ISTAR regardless of whether they receive services or not. And I'll get to that. But what they need to do, and I don't know the full process of this, but the way that they get around that is that they need a grade level whenever they put those kids in. And they're supposed to use grade level, I think it's 22, and it's called evaluated. And so they are supposed to get numbers for those kids, and something to do with that evaluated code is what allows them to be in SIS without being active yet. And so again, I'm not a SIS expert, but that's the extent of what I know. So yes, they do have to have those kids in. Okay, so next, Fund K. So Fund K, we had an example earlier of a student that went to a parochial school half the day and a public school half the day. They don't even have to really go to the public school. They just have to be receiving the services from the public district. So physically where they're at doesn't matter, but they have to have an IEP. So these are kids that are either homeschooled or they go to a parochial school for regular ed, but they have still enrolled in your district and they have an IEP and they receive special ed services from the public district. So that is Fund K. Fund L. These are non-public, not enrolled. These are students that have a service plan and they go to a parochial school for general ed and they receive services from the public district. So these are service plan kids. These are parochial kids. Parochial, when we say parochial, it's different from the term private. So I know a lot of times that when we talk about parochial schools in the state, people call that a private. We have to be careful because a private facility for us is a therapeutic day school. It's a totally different animal. Okay, so we try to say parochial here. Fund P, these are kids that are homeschooled. They're not enrolled, but they are getting special ed services from the public district on an ISP. Okay, so these K, L, and P are going to deal with parochial and homeschool kids. And just like when Jody asked me the question earlier, my first response was, do they have an IEP or an ISP? Her answer was IEP. That's a K. If she had said ISP, that kid, because it was parochial, would have been an L. Okay. Next, these codes have an actual claim tied to them in ISTAR. So not only are they going to have an approval record, but they're going to have a claim record. And we're going to start working on claims in the spring and summer, but I'm still going to talk about these and how important they are. The first codes we talked about, the first 4, those go into evidence-based funding. You are counted for those kids, okay? They go into the formula, but there is no particular claim tied to them. So the first one is Fund B, private day. This is going to be for tuition in therapeutic day schools, and it's also going to be for your room and board in residential facilities. These students go to non-public facilities. They can be out-of-state public schools. It includes tuition and room and board. Okay. These are reimbursed for tuition after you spend 2 times your district's per cap. So your per cap is basically what ISB has calculated each year it costs to educate a child in your district, any child. So if your per cap is determined to be $10,000, then you're going to have to spend $20,000, and after that you'll start getting reimbursed for therapeutic day. It's at a proration. Last year the proration was 89%. Okay, so you get money back, but it's not 100%. For residential, up until, as I've been here for 18 years, last year was the first time residential wasn't paid at 100%. I have heard though, learned though, that in the past, before I was here, that it wasn't always paid at 100%. So last year it wasn't paid out at 100%, but it is usually somewhere close. So you don't have to spend a per cap for residential. Fund D, those are in 2 locations. One of them is in the room, and she knows how to work her Fund D magic, and she just takes care of all of them just take care of it on their own. So again, only in 3 co-ops in the state. So if you aren't one of them, you're not going to have those kids. Fund E, these are your orphanage students. These are considered youth in care. They are public kids and they have an IEP. They're 100% reimbursable. So remember, set your task to check the youth in care tab. Fund F, these are a B plus an E. So they're private day, therapeutic, and they are orphans. So a B plus an E, that's going to be an F, 100% reimbursable. And for Fund F, you can also get all the costs that are in the rate plus special transportation. So on a B, you cannot claim special transportation separately. You can only claim the daily rate that you're charged times the number of days the child goes. And oh boy, here we go. Fund G. Fund G is new. So if you're new, no big deal. A lot of you are not new, but Fund G. This is a separate public school. This is the result of Senate Bill 3606, which was created in an effort to try to get the district some money back where excess cost has failed. These have to be separate schools, so they can be separate public schools, separate special ed day schools, so they can be a co-op school. They have to be 100% special ed. They cannot be a program that's in a public school building. It has to be a separate facility by the statute. So I keep looking, waiting for this to fill up with questions. So the thing that I don't know right now is the entire process for you as schools to apply for this. And that's all in the works still. So I'm not going to be able to help you on how you get to that point. I do know you'll go through the Illinois Purchase Care Review Board, and it will be very, very similar to how private facilities, so our Fund Bs, our therapeutic days, it will be very, very similar to that process. In addition, as far as the claim goes, I had mentioned earlier, it's an easy one. Well, because there will be a daily rate set for these facilities, it will be like claiming a Fund B or a Fund F. So these are going to be orphanage students that go to those types of facilities. So separate public schools that are 100% special ed. So a lot of these are going to be co-op classes or co-op programs that are in a co-op building. An example of a separate school. So again, like I said earlier, I don't know, tell me, what's your co-op, Monica? I want to make it relevant to you guys. So is Arrow a Fund G? Well, hold on. Fund G is for orphans, okay? Okay, so Fund G is for orphans that go to, for example, maybe an Arrow co-op, Arrow program. But when I say an Arrow program, Arrow's one of our co-ops up north. When I say that, it has to be a separate building. It can't be a program in one of your district schools. So if it's at Arrow, then yes, that's a separate special ed only facility. All right. All right. So Case DuPage, same thing. So if Case has a program in their building, in their co-op at Case, so if they have a program there and kids go into that building and they receive that with their peers that are all special ed kids. So most of the time these kids are 100% special ed and they're in that facility all day long, but it's a building that is in the co-op that will be counted as a separate school. If it is, so say, but say that these same kids, Monica, came to your school district and they were in one of your school buildings, one of your public school buildings in a classroom, that will not be able to be approved. Okay, again, it's just, it has to be 100% separate facility. So Sandy, if a student is 100% special ed in a co-op, but the program is in our building, it doesn't count. If you've got regular ed kids in your building, I assume you do, then it's not going to be qualify for that. They won't be able to apply. So if they are orphans, in this situation, they're a G. I'm going to skip Philip J. Rock. If they are not orphans, but they're in that situation, they're an S. So these are the two new codes for that. So this is from Senate Bill 3606. If you want to go read about it, you can. I attended a boot camp with IAASE and they talked briefly about it, but there are people you can reach out to and talk to with that entity. If you're a member of IAASE or if your director is and they want to know more, that's where they need to go, because a lot of that originated from that association. They were instrumental in getting this passed. So if you have questions that I probably can't answer, you'll be able to claim transportation for G, I think, but not for S. It's going to have to be in the rate. So again, when I'm talking about reimbursement for these, it's going to be in the rate. Okay. So yeah, I mean, so somebody says, what if they're in foster care? So, and I hope I answered that correctly. Foster care doesn't always mean that they're an orphan, and I don't think I made that clear earlier. A lot of times, if they're in foster care, they're going to qualify for orphanage, but it's not a shoe-in. It's not always. So I try to say orphanage, but I answered that question on when she said foster. All right, so Fund S and Fund G, they're both new ones. They're both the same thing. It's just basically, these kids are going to be Fund S unless they're an orphan, they'll be a G. It's just like the difference between an A and an E, okay? It has to be, where they go though, has to be an approved separate public special ed school. So it has to be a separate brick and mortar building that does not serve regular ed kids at all. It has to be approved and go through Illinois Purchase Care Review Board, okay? The fund codes do not come out tomorrow, okay? So I'm going out on a limb even talking about this, but I could not delay a new user training any longer. You guys needed it. So I've skipped Philip J. Rock. It's going to be specifically for Philip J. Rock. The majority of you are not going to have kids that you would code that way. All right, Fund X, I mentioned earlier. Fund X is what we have had in place for many, many years, and a lot of it was to kind of fill the void for expensive co-op programs like what we were just talking about. So Fund X, you can take your A kids, and if you think or suspect throughout the school year that they are going to cost 4 times your district per cap in cost to educate, you could change them from an A to an X and try to get a little bit more money for them. Okay, so I have a question right now. Let me get through this and I'll answer your question about this. So for Fund X, if you're our example earlier, we said ISB has dictated that our per cap's $10,000 a year. So if you are going to have a child and you know they're going to a co-op program, it's going to cost you $85,000 for the year for this kid, then you're going to say, well, 10,000 times 4 is 40,000. At that cost, yes, I'm exceeding 4 times the per cap. So then what you would do is say, I'm going to change my fund code from an A to an X. And then I am going to submit on my claim what I am charged from that private facility. These can be not private facility, from the co-op. These can be co-op kids. They can be really expensive in-district kids. And under those circumstances, you may have to figure out what the cost is. But regardless, you think they're going to cost more than 4 times the per cap, and then you want to file for excess cost. So then when excess cost was paid, it was paid at a proration. So you really didn't know how much money you were going to get for these Fund X kids until you got it, until the deposit came through. Because what ISB would do is look to see in our room and board fund, are we going to have any money left over after we pay room and board claims? If they had at least $1 million remaining in that pot after they paid the claims out, then they would decide that they were going to pay excess cost. Then they had to look and see, well, what was the total dollar amount of all the Fund X claims that came in? And then they would figure out how much they could pay based on their overage. So it was always at a proration. So the first year I started, it was 8 cents on the dollar. The last time they paid it, which was 3 years ago, it was 37 cents on the dollar. So it was never close to 100%, but it was a little bit that helped. However, I think this was the 3rd summer that we have not had any money left over in room and board or enough to pay excess costs. So it hasn't been paid at all. Okay. So the question I have over here is, are these new codes in 3606 a replacement for excess cost? Figuratively, yes. Literally, no. Excess cost is still going to exist. We're still going to have Fund X. Probably not going to have the money for it, but it is in statute, so it's not something we can just drop. So it would have to go through things, you know, it would have to go back through the Senate and the House, and it would be like an amendment is the way I understand it. And I just, you know, right now I don't think that they're going to get rid of it yet. I'm not saying they won't, but right now it's still in statute, so it still exists. Fund Q, these are your due process kids. I wanted to mention these. I usually leave it out, but we've had quite a few of these this past year. So if you have kids that are at a non-approved facility through due process or some other issue at the district, these are Fund Q kids. And sometimes when we are working with you on these, we have to have ISB come in and do, like in the background, IT come in and do some things there. And we would have them come and correct those. And then our clients would get in and not see what they thought they should, and they would change it up, and then we'd have to have ISB go fix it again. So if you have Fund Q, just be very mindful that they're very, what's the word? Delicate. It's a delicate process. So try not to bother those if you have Fund Q kids. And there aren't very many, so few that I probably shouldn't even have talked about it, but I just want to put that plug in that they're delicate. So, all right. At the beginning of the session, I mentioned about kids that were not be counted on the December 1 child count, and I brought up Fund N and U. So Fund N and U are these oddball fund codes that we have. So sometimes we need data on kids even though they're not receiving services. And it's when you've done an initial evaluation on them. So if you have done an initial on a student and for some reason they don't end up receiving services, we still need some data about these kids in iStar. And as you've seen, the only way to have an approval record is to pick a fund code, first thing, most important piece of it all. So we need to know, did this student, if you did their initial, did you do this within 60 school days? So that's one reason we need to have these, okay? Indicator 11. For Fund N, sometimes we need to know if you had a parochial kid that you did an evaluation on and they are eligible but they're not receiving services, we need to know about these kids. We need to know they're out there. It will affect your proportionate share. So if you don't have parochial or situation, you won't need to worry about proportionate share, but these are used, Fund N is used for, it's a dual purpose again, for proportionate share and for the 60-day timeline collection. Fund U is just for the 60-day timeline collection. So the 60-day timeline is indicator 11. That's one of the state performance plans that we collect on, and I'm going to go over how to do that here in a couple pages. But we have to know that you did these initials, that you did them in 30 day, or I'm sorry, am I saying 30? I meant 60. 60-day timeline. And then whenever you make an NRU, you can tell us the reason they're not receiving services. So they're not eligible. They're eligible, but parent refused services, those kinds of things. So it's on initials only. It's not on reevals. It's not on annual reviews. It's not on amendments. Only when you do initials on kids, you will put them in as an N or a U if for some reason they do not receive services after that evaluation. If they do, then they're going to be an A, B, etc. But if they don't, they're going to be an N if they're parochial or homeschool. They're going to be a U if they're public kids. Okay. All right. Definition time. Not going to go completely through these. You just need to have them on file. Percent special ed versus percent time inside. Remember, percent special ed is the content of the education, the minutes of instruction. We don't care where they're at when we're talking about this. It's what they're getting, not where they're getting it. Percent time inside the regular classroom. Absolutely. This is going to determine the EE code. Some of you may call that LRE still, least restrictive environment. Regardless, absolutely about their environment. Very important to be accurate on. You're going to see this is going to come into play for some of you are seeing it right now with LEA determinations. If you're getting dings on 5A or 6A, 5A is coming from here. Okay. All right. Definitions here. Where the child lives, the school they would go to if they weren't in special ed, who's operating the program, where are they physically seated. Almost all the time we can do that, remember? Sometimes on those littles, we can't get it exactly right. So if the serving school is Miss Sally's daycare, you just do the best you can based on your serving district. So it's only going to allow you to, put in locations that fall into this serving district. All right. A delete versus an end add. So Dora, she asked me this at 10:02. Here's the answer to your question. Is it always better to do an end add? It depends. So if you're going to do an end add, you need to look at the record and see, you know, do I want to make a change and preserve the history of this record and then move on? So did this student have a meeting, and when this meeting they got another disability and they added 3 related services? Do I want to just go in and edit my existing record and add all that stuff? Probably not. So yeah, an end add is usually the way to go. So when would you just do an edit? You would just do an edit if first one situation, say it's the beginning of the school year and there were changes made, and that is how the child is going to start out the new year. That IEP is starting out with these changes that were made over the summer. Go in and change the existing record. If you get down the road and you look at a record and you're working on something and you say, well, that is absolutely not correct. That has to be a typo. You go look and you figure out, yep, it's a mistake. If it's a mistake, direct edit. Don't do an end add and preserve a mistake. We don't care about that. Okay, just be careful when you're editing. You don't want to lose history that's valid. So I like end adds. I help with claims. I want to see when changes occur. I want to see that, no, they didn't have this individual aid all year long. So I'm not going to say, give me their full year salary and we're going to claim it. No, we need to know they only had the aid half the year. We need half the salary, those kinds of things. So when I'm doing claims with people, I want to know those things. Some people think that it's overkill. I can't tell you what way to do it, but what my preference is, as far as having good data, is to do end adds when something changes. So it's up to you. Also, this is how you delete a record with your red X here. So when do we delete? We delete when the student did not receive services in the entire school year. There's a lot of that going on. Your end add that we talked about is the little chain link next door. Okay, so delete or chain link. When you click on the delete, it makes you look at the record, scroll to the bottom, and hit delete again. So if you accidentally hit the red X, you're not, it's not the end of the world. All right, so I've talked also about indicator 11 a little bit in the 60-day timeline. Also, I'm going to talk about indicator 13. So there are several state performance plan indicators that are collected in iStar. Some of them are really obvious and some of them are not. So we collect for 5, 6, 9, 10. You can go look these up if you want to, but LEA determinations, we just had a preview and they're getting ready to come out. So this is a hot topic. So 5, 6, 9, and 10 come from iStar, and they came from our December 1 child count from this last school year. So the one we picked up in February, that's where the data comes from. We also collect for 11 and 13. That's very obvious. So 5 and 6 and 9 and 10, they come off of the approval record from existing fields you already have to report for IDEA. So it's about educational environment, and the disproportionality is for 9 and 10 is about ethnicity and disability. So it's data you're already reporting. You don't even really know what's happening. 11 and 13, very obvious because you have to go fill these out. So for 11, the 60-day timeline, a response is required for all students. So we have to address it for all students. For indicator 13, unless they're parochial or homeschool kids, then you have to address this when the student is 14 and a half or older. If you're a pre-K through 8 district, you're not going to have a ton of those, but you will have some, and you have to do those the day the student turns 14 and a half. So don't think that just because they're going on to high school, it's their responsibility. All right, so to add an indicator 11 record, you can click from the search results, you can click from the approval record. There are several locations. If you think you're going to forget to do this, you won't, because the air checking will remind you to go do this. So you're going to add this for new students that you're putting in. Other students probably already have this, a record there, so you won't do that. But when you hit add, you're going to type in, if you just did the initial, you're going to type in the date the consent was signed. You're going to type in the date that the meeting was held. Then you're going to select the evaluating district, which would be your district. If you're a co-op, it would be the district that you're doing this for. And you'll hit recalculate. If you see 60 or less in this school days field, then you're good. If you see more than 60, then you're going to have to tell a reason why the timeline was not met. If you click on these little papers, it will show you what those reasons are. Some of them are compliant reasons, some of them are non-compliant reasons. In that manual I pulled up earlier, it will tell you which ones are which. However, in a nutshell, if it's the district's fault, you're going to be in non-compliance. If it's the parent's fault, then it's going to be a compliant reason for going over 60 days. Now, that is if you have just done the initial. If you have a child that moves into you and they already have an IEP and you did not do their initial, you still have to create a record. But instead of providing all this data, you jump to the bottom. You're going to say reason not applicable 02 and then save it. So you have to address this for every student. Whether you provide this data or the reason in A is going to depend on whether you just did the initial or not. We want initials only, and we only want initials that were done in this school year. We don't want re-evals, we don't want annual reviews. Okay? All right, indicator 13. This should be coming from the IEP. This is busy work. You're going to come in and you're going to fill this out. It is somewhat intuitive. If you hit yes, then you're going to get yes options on one. If you hit no, then you're not going to have 1B and 1C. So you come down through here. What you want to see at the bottom, the perfect result would be a yes. That means that the student is approved in iStar and they are meeting the indicator. If you get a no, that means the student is approved in iStar, but we're going to give you a warning because this plan is not in compliance with ISB. So this can still result in a finding for you if it is not meeting the standards of the indicator. What we will not accept, we will give you an error for, is if the student has turned 14 and a half and this is incomplete or blank, we'll give you an incomplete and you will get an error on your entire approval record. So the whole approval record will be disapproved. So you want to make sure that If it's incomplete and that is realistic, that you're talking to someone and saying, we need to get this done. We need to get this done by July 15th. Otherwise, you're going to have a compliance issue. Okay. This one you can fix. 11, what's done is done. If you went over the days and it was the district's fault, you can't go back on that. 13, you can work on. You can get it in compliance. Okay. All right. So I talked about when we're on an individual record and you can enter your data and you can hit save and check errors and it'll tell you if you have warnings on or errors per record. But you don't want to do that to figure out where all your errors are. You want to see a report. I want to see all my errors together. So what you will do first is make sure that you trigger the error checking. You want a fresh copy of your error report, and you want to make sure that that error checking has just gone through and that everything is as up to date as possible. So what you'll do is run a recheck edits. So this is from your reported tab. You'll hit the recheck edits. You're going to get a couple emails really fast that tell you the process started and that it's completed. Usually by the time I check my email, I've already got them both. So I don't even check the email anymore to make sure. But what that will do is it will make sure that your error report is updated. So if you were to come into iStar right now and you have no idea when a recheck was ran, this error report is going to be moot. It's not going to mean anything because it's just going to be a copy of whatever has been sitting there for days, maybe months, we don't know. So you want to run the recheck, and that will let you know that when you run that error report, as of that moment, it is up to date. Okay, so you're going to go under to reports up at the top. When you do that, you're going to be at application reports. All the reports you're going to run are going to be application reports usually. Your report type is student, your category is errors, and then you're going to look at student approval errors listing. You can run it to a PDF, you can export it to Excel. There's also a way down below, there are some filters, and over on the far right hand side at the bottom, it'll say error type. If you want to put in fatal, it will just show you fatal errors and it will push the warnings out of the report. Sometimes that's easier for me to look at. I don't want to see those warnings until my errors are taken care of. I'm not going to say they're not important, but I want to get my errors taken care of first. And I don't want to see those warnings just kind of pushed in because it's in alphabetical order. So you don't really want to see all that. So sometimes I go again, down here in the bottom right, there's a filter that says error type and you want to do fatal. Okay. Whew. We're almost at 2 hours, guys. Goodness, I'm sorry. It's a lot. So do I have any questions on student that we want to talk about before I move on to personnel? I promise personnel's not as long. Okay, I don't see any questions. Okay, so personnel approvals, we only have approvals, there is no claim. For personnel, in special ed, your district gets a set amount of money each year for reimbursement. It's based off of the last year we actually had a claim, which was the 15-16 school year. That claim was paid based on a return of $9,000 for a full-time teacher and $3,500 for a full-time paraprofessional. So if they worked all year full-time, that was the return back then. So essentially, whatever you got, the total amount, if you got $100,000 that year in reimbursement, that's what you get automatically every year from ISB. So there is no claim. So it's only approvals. We have a federal report we have to submit on your behalf every fall. And so that's why we collect this. We also use these records for what I said we won't talk about today, claims. Sometimes these come in handy for claims with us as well. So not as big of a market for the claims. I mean, just sometimes it's a handful of personnel that we need, but regardless, it is a piece of that. So what you're going to do to go to your personnel approvals is we're under approvals and claims again. We're going to personnel and we're going to approvals. We have very similar to the student section, as you can see, a reported and an unreported here. Under reported, this is going to show you all the staff members that probably rolled over from last year. Okay. we do not have a begin and end date on these records. We show the time the person spends in the district in the position with their FTE. We'll go over that here in a few slides, but we don't have begin and end dates on them. So if they leave mid-year, you don't give them an end date. You don't delete them out, but we'll adjust the FTE. Okay, so probably right now, if you open this and look and hit search, all the people listed would be the people that rolled over from last year, and that's fine. That's perfectly normal. That's what we want. Unreported personnel in your district that were uploaded in your educator information system file. I don't know if they've had a due date yet, so you may not have had an upload yet, but when there is an existing EIS file for a district, we look at that, and anybody that is in a special ed, what do they call that? Position code. Anyone that shows in EIS with a special ed position code will show up here if you don't have a record for them already. So a lot of times this unreported tab is very, very beneficial because EIS is usually very accurate. Okay. We air check against EIS now, but it's pretty accurate. I'm pretty impressed with that system. So unreported, you can probably rely on that they work for you and that they need to be put into iStar. Do you have to use it? Absolutely not. It's just a tool. If you have new people you want to add in, we're going to have our ad right here. And so what we're going to do with this is we're going to search. We are searching Ellis, EIS, different systems when we're looking for these people. My recommendation is that you get the IEIN number for these folks. If it's a name like mine, if you want to type in Sarah Nelly, you're probably going to find me, and you're probably not going to find anybody else with my name. I've never done that before, but you're probably not going to find anybody else with my name in the state. But if you type in John Smith, you know, there are John Smiths that might have the same date of birth in this state and are teachers. So for those more common names, I would want to use the IEIN number to be sure that you're adding the right person into the system. Okay. So once you find that person, you will go ahead, it will create an approval record for you. And this is the whole record, guys. Like, I know it's bigger overall, more real estate, but look at these fields, very little data entry. So your year, your entity is your district. The first thing you're going to do when you come in here is you're going to look and see, did this person work for me on December 1st? So right now we're talking about this upcoming December 1st because this isn't due until July. Okay. So did this person work for me on December 1st? It's the same idea as with the kids. If they worked for you from August to October, the box is not checked. If they started with you on December 2nd, the box is not checked. Okay. They have to be employed by you on December 1st. Sometimes people say, well, what if they weren't working for me on December? What if they weren't at work on December 1st? What if they were on maternity leave? They're employed by you still. So keep it checked. Okay. Next, what you're going to do is come right here in the middle next to the work assignment. You're going to hit add, and then you're going to select what do they do? What is their special ed position? A lot of your teachers are going to be LBS. You're going to have paras. You're going to have related service providers, psych, social workers, speech paths. What do they do? And then you're going to select the FTE for them. This is something that is coming out in iStar tomorrow in conjunction with the new manual. And as you can see, this has changed. We are allowing now the FTE to be selected to 2 decimal places instead of 1. So if you are a co-op and you have HHI workers, if you have OTs that work for 22 of your districts and you have no idea how you're going to put them in because they are exceeding 1.0 big time, this is our answer to that. So we've been working on this. We ran into this last summer, and so this summer we were like, this is not going to go away. Yeah, maybe it's only 2 or 3 districts, but how do we tell them what to pick? How do I tell our, the co-op, well, you're just going to have to pick, 10 of them to put in and let it add up to a 1.0. So what was happening is if they work for all these districts, we can't exceed an FTE of 1.0. If they work for 22 districts and the only thing they can choose is a 0.1, clearly that's going to be a 2.2, and it's going to be an error for everyone. So how do we say, well, just pick these 10 districts? So anyway, it didn't happen to a lot of people. There weren't a lot of records, but at the end of the day, this was the solution. It's not going to affect anything that you already have in. It's only going to help these people that have the issue that I'm talking about. So if you have, all right, speech paths that were hired by an agency, do we add them too? The manual says that you add contractors in. So if you can get them to get an IEIN number, then you can put them into iStar. If you cannot get them to get the IEIN number, then they will not be in iStar. All right, so again, you're going to select your FTE. If you're you want to calculate it out, there is a calculation that you can use. A lot of people just know it's a 1.0 or it's a 0.5 or whatever. But sometimes if you're overlapping with another district, then you're going to have to kind of get together with them and say, well, what are you going to put? A lot of times they'll say, well, I had them from such and such to such and such. I'm going to put a 0.2. And you say, okay, I'm going to put 0.8. And everybody's happy. Okay. But if they want to get particular and calculate, that's the calculation. And we're going to 2 decimal places now. All right, so typically you're going to have 1 work assignment for most of your people. If you have paras though, and they work with pre-K and K through 12 kids, then they want to know what portion of that FTE is spent with the different parties. So if you have someone that is a program aide in the morning in pre-K and they're a program aide in the afternoon in kindergarten, then on that same approval record, you're going to have 2 entries for work assignments. So you're going to hit add twice. You're going to have a PA3 with a 0.5 FTE. You're going to have a PA6 with a 0.5 FTE. The next question I always get when I talk about this is, what's the difference between a program aide and a teacher's aide? A program aide is a non-licensed one-to-one aide. So that does not read like what you think at all. All right? Program aide, a non-licensed one-to-one aide. These are the people that are taking them to lunch, to the restroom, down the hallways, etc. All right? They're not licensed. Teacher's aides, the TAs, they are licensed, so they can provide instruction with under the supervision of a teacher. So they're a classroom aide, okay? As far as the non-certified health aides go, I do have a lot of questions usually about school nurses. So a lot of people want to take their nurse and put them in as a school nurse in personnel. Remember, to qualify as that work assignment in general, to be a school nurse, they're supposed to have an RN and an LBS, or a Pell, I'm sorry, a Pell. So they have to be licensed and be an RN. So if they are not, then they're going to be an NHA. Okay, so it's non-licensed nurses and health aides. Okay, this is what it looks like if you needed to have 2 entries for a person, whether they're one-to-one, classroom aide, or a non-certified nurse or health person. So this is what your entries would look like. See the 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. When you would look up at the top of their record where the name and everything is, you would see their total FTE is 1.0. You cannot exceed the 1.0. Okay, so once you enter in the work assignment, it will then tell you what is the type of staff member, what is their special ed type. So for this one, you can see we've put in program aide, and that equates to paraprofessional staff. Do you need to do anything with this? No, but it's on this form and it will populate based on what you put in for work assignment. So I just want to say, this is what it means. It populates on its own. You don't have to do anything with it. So you're going to have teachers, related service providers, paras, and administrators. Okay. All right. And then errors. So it's really hard to create an error for personnel. Like you have to not enter the FTE, which is really difficult to do. But we spend most of our time trying to look at why people are qualified versus not qualified. So warnings are not going to cause errors for personnel, and we submit qualified and not qualified personnel on the federal report regardless. But it's important that you have qualified staff. So if you fill out an approval record for a personnel and it comes back with a warning that says not qualified, if you look right here above the approval record, it says show current credentials. You can click on that and it will tell you what the Ellis record looks like for the child. All right. So it's going to show you their Ellis record. So it'll look similar to this: certificates, endorsements, etc. You can compare that to the work assignment you have selected. So when you open up those credentials, you can then click on the code that you've selected for the person, and it'll tell you this is what they should have. Then you're going to be able to see their Ellis record. This is what they do have. You compare those and find the hole. What's the problem? Okay, we can help you do that too. All right, I have a question. Fund code N is the student is found not eligible. They need to be entered for an initial meeting. So if their fund code N is for kids who are parochial kids, so they would have an ISP. So they go to parochial school or they're homeschooled with mom and dad. If you evaluate them on an initial, then you'll put them in as fund code N, yes. If they're public kids, they're U. Okay, finally, well, we're right at 2 hours, you guys. Wow, we made it. Okay, so if you need support, I don't think I've ever mentioned this. I get used to, I think it goes without mentioning. All of our services are free. You can call us or email us anytime you need to. We are here to support you. Sometimes we're going to have to say, we can't help you with that. But most of the time, we can put you in the right direction if we don't know the answer to something. Okay, so we should be typically your first place to come. If it's something very, very specific about SIS, you don't want to call us. You're going to go to the IWAS help desk. If it's something specific about IWAS or any other systems, we're going to have a hard time. If it's an overall, something kind of broad, check with us first. All right. We work very closely with the funding and disbursements and special ed departments at ISB. We meet with them almost weekly. So we're typically able to tell you what's going on as things are happening. So I know that I can't tell you everything I want to be able to about 3606. I don't know how you apply yet. I don't know how you're going to find out if you're an eligible school. I don't know, when you're going to go to the Illinois Purchase Care Review Board meetings. I don't know how you're going to set your rates, but the gist of it is there, okay? So tomorrow, remember, we're going to send out our news briefing. Watch that video. If you didn't quite understand the early childhood stuff, there's a screenshot there that Kendra made as well. Look at that. That news briefing is packed full of stuff, okay? But also remember to go look and sign up for any of the trainings that we've put on. So I was a little late getting everything out there, but having to postpone this training kind of threw me back. So we've got those through December. All right. And then make sure that you are looking at this resources page. So our website, of course, but this planning calendar I've talked about several times, and then our printable calendar. We don't have every single thing on here. Like we don't have correction periods, but we've got the big highlights. And it's a one-pager, so you can print it out and put it on your clipboard or your pegboard, whatever. All right, our user guide. This is something, do not print this out. It's huge, but this is a good resource to go to if you say, I don't remember how to do an NDAD. I don't remember what I'm supposed to do. I don't remember what date I'm supposed to use, or etc. You can go there and you're going to find real quick things to do, that you can help you do those small tasks. How does she add an approval record? How do I delete that? I can't think of all the things, but one big one there is how do I use LEA list maintenance? I've got a kid that's going to a school that I've never had anybody go to this year, and I need to add that. That's the #1 link that I use out of that to email to people that ask about that. So that's going to be in the user guide. And again, don't print it out. It's huge. But it's going to have admin level stuff, student level stuff, personnel level stuff, and then our training events. So again, this is the link to what I was just talking about. They're on our website. So if you don't want to wait for if you don't want to wait for the news briefing to come out tomorrow, they're under events on our website already. So you can go register for anything you want to there for the rest of the fall and early winter. I'm going through basically through December. I do one in December usually. I know everybody's like checked out, but I try to do one that's like getting us ready for the child count, just keeping it on that radar. So, okay, I will take any questions that you guys have. You know, I mentioned doing a Q&A, but I don't think I'm going to now. So I had a question written down about the report for kids that were, to see if there's any kids unchecked. So I'll send an email out to everybody with the answer to that if I can find that. I'm almost positive there's a report. I just can't remember for sure where it's at. So I'll send the email out and I'll send that to all of you so you can get that answer on that. So but I'll hang around for a few minutes. I know it's been 2 hours, so I'll hang around for a few minutes. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for attending. I will see you at the next session. And remember that we did record this, so if you need to come back, you can do that. So I'll hang around for a few minutes if anybody has anything they want to ask. Oh, I see some of my giveaway winners. I see Lisa. I hope you got your package from me. You got a free giveaway for attending trainings in August. Jesse, you did too. And let me see. So all of you will be put into that for next month as well. Okay. And then I don't see my other, no, my other one's not on today. Oh, okay. So Lisa probably got it from the month before. Yeah, awesome. Okay, I probably just missed this, but should you delete personnel when they leave our district? If they worked, so if they worked for you last year but not this year, yes, delete. But if they work for you, say that they work for you now but they leave in October, you adjust the FTE. Don't delete them. There's no end date. So with kids, we would think, oh, we'll put an end date on them because they left. With personnel, you change the FTE. Okay, on all my approvals, all my students are marked as program. I'm not able to change them to calendar. Am I doing something wrong? Fund A kids don't have a claim, so they default to program because there's a possibility that they will be involved in a program if we're costing out orphanage kids next year. So that's the default. They don't need to be calendar because they won't have a claim. Okay, I see some other, Megan, we never got to do your training. I know you want to do a one-to-one and you're just so busy, but if you need to do a follow-up with me, just let me know, okay? I still had your paper on my desk. Okay, it looks like things are quiet now. Everybody's kind of hanging up. So remember, guys, if you have questions, please, please, please ask us. Ask us now. Now's the time. We've got so much time. Now's the time to be working on this, getting things answered, working out the kinks. So please reach out to us, email us, or give us a call. We're happy to help, and I will be sure that I follow up on this one question today. But again, reach out to us when you need to. Thank you guys so much for attending, and thank you for all the really good questions. So I will see you at the next session. Bye, guys.